The most important relationship you'll ever have is the one you have with yourself. But so many of us would rather work on every other relationship and thing in our lives before actually sitting with ourselves. Welcome to Aligned and Flowing. So, full disclosure, I was not planning to record today, but then there are days where the content just comes to you and it doesn't want to wait. And today is one of those days. So the first time I heard this line was in my mid-20s, and I was watching Sex and the City. I think it was a season finale, and Carrie's love interest had just gotten engaged to someone else. And the season closes with this line. But as the show goes on, we see everything that Carrie actually does to avoid going inward and looking at the relationship she has with herself. Of course, that makes for very entertaining TV, but are we missing the plot somewhere? And why do we even need to look at this thing called the relationship with ourselves? So let's start with what a relationship is. It's how two things, two people, two groups, or two states are connected to each other. And when you talk about this relationship with yourself, I think it's much to do with how you truly feel about yourself. Now, most of us, myself included, try our level best to avoid focusing on that relationship with ourselves. How do we do that? Well, there are multiple ways, but two ways that I've seen fairly often is one, busyness, and another form is it's escapism. So actually, stepping back, it's essentially escapism to avoid looking at yourself, but this is how it can look on the outside. You fill your calendar with work commitments, social commitments, family commitments, so that you literally have no time to actually sit with yourself. Or the other alternative is you just avoid it by binging on some Netflix series or just hanging out with others so you don't have to spend any time alone. And extending on this approach is where you take on other people as projects to avoid focusing on that relationship with yourself. Now, I know that I have done all three, to be honest. And it's quite interesting. Those who are highly driven tend to use their overflowing calendars to avoid working on themselves. And you don't necessarily realize that when you're doing it, but a lot of people have this moment of absolute confusion about themselves and what they want to do in their lives. Say, for a workaholic, when they retire or they quit their job and they just suddenly don't have no clue who they are or what they want to do in their lives, and life just seems like this empty, confusing space. The other thing that you can do is where this applies to people with high degrees of empathy, where they take on other people as projects, right? So they end up being this unpaid coach and therapist. They are kind, they're supportive, they listen. So others lean on them for strength and support. And there's this whole energetic back and forth going on, which is good. But I think it's very important to realize that every individual has their own path, their own journey. And sometimes when you take on other people as projects without let's say, being trained to do so, or even without their explicit request, you can, one, enable them, because if you did not function in that capacity, they may either step up or engage professional help. Plus, because you don't have the right training to protect your own energy, you can end up getting burned out. So these are some of the beautiful ways that you can use to avoid focusing on that relationship with yourself. So for me, my journey to working on my relationship with myself was really brought into focus last year when I had a severe case of nodular cystic acne. And I was doing everything from medical treatments, diet, everything under the sun essentially to get rid of this, but I just couldn't. And it was a very difficult period because I'm someone who puts in the work, be it at the gym or whatever, and I'm relatively invested in my health. And all of a sudden, this just seemed so out of control. Plus, particularly in our Asian cultures, you have a lot of people who just love to share their view on what's happening in your face, maybe forgetting that you actually do own a mirror at home. The interesting thing was I was actually planning some travel during that time. It was travel that I was very excited about and I had really been looking forward to. And for the first time, I felt like, oh, I don't really want to go out in open and be seen like this. But I remember I bought 2 little pouches. Maybe I'll show you at the end. One that said, "Hello, gorgeous," and 2, the other one was, "You look great, by the way." Because when this started happening, I knew I just really needed to go in and focus on myself. I needed to sit with everything that I hadn't been sitting with for so long. Because I had a tendency, I think, to put everyone else maybe before me. And even if I had like a whole lot going on, I'd still try to balance it and make room for others. So last year was the first year where I just took a step back and I disengaged from all the people that I had taken on as projects. Because it's, after all, an exchange of energy, and I would rather focus on the relationships that also give me energy rather than those where it's just more a one-way approach. So while I was working on my relationship with myself, an interesting thing that happened was I had connected with one of my schoolmates just a couple of months ago, and I was visiting her in Italy. And at that time, because I had my severe nodular cystic acne, I was feeling rather insecure in my own body. And that was the first time for me because I'm someone who's usually quite confident in my body. And I remember that time with my friend very much. It's quite interesting. We were not really close in school, but at the time we first connected, we were both at a place in our lives where we were working on ourselves. We were focused inward and we were at a place where we wanted to face our limiting beliefs and things that were a bit dark but had to be dwelled into. And so we just met three times, and here I was going to Italy, and we had like planned a week together. And it was one of those times where I was not feeling good about myself. And my friend, she's such a beautiful woman who's absolutely confident in herself. And I remember her putting on her makeup, and she did it with, she did it not from a place of insecurity. She would just put on her makeup in the morning as a woman who already knew that she was beautiful. And she would just put on her makeup, just like, an artist, just putting it on and seeing how her existing beauty enhances. So she really embodied what it was to be a beautiful woman. And I remember her constantly telling me, "You are so beautiful. You just don't see it right now. I see it." And the interesting thing is, when she told me that, she was able to get through to me. The reason she got through to me was because she was able to embody feeling beautiful in her own skin. And that's one aspect of the relationship with yourself. Because growing up, somewhere down the line, I had picked up the habit of being my worst critic. And this applied on so many different fronts. Even when I had just started working, I remember my bosses they would know that even if I made the slightest mistake, I would beat myself up so much. Mediocrity was not an option. I was striving for excellence. And this is not a bad thing. But sometimes by being your worst critic, you can be your worst enemy, because you might not give yourself the grace to take chances and explore new opportunities because you are so crippled with self-doubt. See, you can have a beautiful family, a beautiful partner, amazing friends, but they can't fill all those holes in your lives. You are essentially trying to outsource an internal job by asking someone or even hoping that someone can fill your cup that way. So when I started working on my relationship with myself, that meant the starting point was letting go of all the people that I had taken on as projects, because I had to become my own biggest, best project for that time. So I had to focus on my physical health, the beliefs and the patterns that were holding me back. And most importantly, I had to appreciate that I have a limited time on earth. So what is it that I want to do in my life? And I think that made a world of a difference. So I remember for my 30th birthday, this lovely, lovely soul, she gave me this book. It was called two journals, actually. One was the bucket list, 101 things I want to do with my one wild, amazing life. And the other one was on my goals. So I started writing things down, and some were small things, some were a little bigger, the travel I wanted to do. And I really focused on the things that I wanted to do in my life. Next, I was willing to spend a lot of time on my own and discovering where my fears, where my doubts, where my insecurities were, and how I was going to move through it. And 3, I decided to let go of perfectionism and just go for it. Because I kind of wanted to do this YouTube channel for a while, but for the most parts, I had just been thinking about it. So one day I just got up and thought, hey, now I'm going to do it. And the reason that I think I was able to start is because I had made myself the project. All that energy that I had been pouring onto others, I just started pouring to myself. And to be honest, I'm actually quite happy with the results. It means that I've started building a life that I truly enjoy. I'm taking chances in my career, going in different directions, traveling more, connecting better. And I just feel like the connections around you transform so much more, be it with family, be it with friends, be it professionally. Because see, when you work on your relationship with yourself and you just have a better relationship with yourself, you are bound to have a better relationship with others. And I see this as true for myself and also for the friend I just mentioned who hadn't been doing a whole lot of work. Tara, dedicating this to you. So it was her birthday this week and she was in such a good place and she was celebrating with friends, and she just told me that she feels so loved. And she felt so loved and such good energy because she had done the work on herself. And this is the same thing that I felt at my birthday last year, because where I felt so much peace and just so much love from my family, my friends. I just celebrated my birthday with one of my friends in the UK and her husband, and it was the first time I was celebrating without all my family around me. But it was one of those moments where you just feel like you're so happy with yourself. You're not looking for something on the outside to fill you. So your relationship with others is just bound to improve when you work on that relationship with yourself. Think about it. How can you not work on that relationship with yourself? You might lose your job. Your partner can leave you. Your children might eventually move on and go on with their own lives. Your friends, as much as they love you, still have their own lives. So you need to be an interesting person for yourself. You need to be fun for yourself. And I think the biggest achievement in life now is to be able to sit with yourself and just have fun. And actually, no, forget fun, have peace. If you are able to just sit with yourself and feel contentment, well, I think that's the biggest achievement in life. So much of life is about that ever-evolving relationship you have with yourself. And if you do have that relationship, if you have that grace and kindness and compassion for yourself, you're bound to have it for others. Maybe this sounds extremely idealistic, but I think that's how we are going to change the world. And as promised, showing you all the things that helped me along the way. Because sometimes you need to be your own cheerleader. And things like this really help you focus on your own life. Coach Niroma, thanks for this. Until next time.